Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be here for the next hour to talk Giants football with you. And, of course, in just a few moments, we're going to talk about the University of Texas Longhorns. Man, oh man, do they have a locker room full of prospects coming up in this year's NFL draft. So we're going to get to them in just a second. And once we get done with that, we will then, of course, take your phone calls at 201-939-4513. We are coming to you from the Giants podcast studio presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Paul Dottino and Matt Citak with you. And before we get to our caller, and not our caller, but our guest to talk about the Texas Longhorns, expect this one to be a lengthy interview, Matt, because they've got a slew of guys with make-it grades, a bunch of guys who are going to be starters, but also just guys who are going to make it in the league.
Yeah, they're probably going to be one of the leaders in terms of number of prospects drafted by the school. I mean, they've got, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they got a long list at just about every position. Similar to the defense. Defense, it seems to be a little bit more up front and in the defensive backfield, but on offense, it's all over the field.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, we're going to get into that now with Noah Gross from KXAN Television in Austin, Texas. Noah, Paul Dottino and Matt Citak with you. Thanks so much for joining us today. And my goodness, you have seen a lot of good football in recent months down there in Austin, and I'm sure that these guys got to be pumped up for the draft. I'm guessing that the guy you are most excited for is going to be Kelvin Banks, who I know a lot of people think he may convert to guard, but man, with his size and his power and his ability to play tackle, I got to wonder if somebody might not just keep him out there.
Gentlemen, good to be on with you today. Yeah, it's funny. There's good football right now, but my first year here a couple years ago, it was the Texas Pro Day soon after I started. They had 0 players drafted, and it was not a lot of big names. And then now you look at this draft, and there's a good chance they have 3 first-round picks, and they had well over 10 guys in the combine the past couple of years. So things have quickly changed around Texas, and yeah, a lot of Longhorns in the NFL draft. As far as Kelvin Banks, he's probably the safest bet of this Longhorn team, and I haven't seen much saying that he's going to be a guard just because since day one he's been a tackle at Texas, and
sure,
in his second game ever, he had to take on some of the best defensive players in the country at Alabama, and that was Quinn Ewers' second game. Obviously, another guy in this draft as well. So Banks has been thrown in the fire immediately, and he's been the most consistent guy. He's fought through some injuries. Whenever he'd come out for a play. I definitely see him staying at tackle, and he's just that guy that is everything you hear, what you want in like a top 15 tackle pick. It's just like as safe and as consistent as you can be.
So what part of Kelvin Banks' game do you think he needs to, refine a little bit in order to become, I guess, like that top-tier tackle in the NFL?
Yeah, I guess just movement and then getting to the second level. The Texas offensive line this past year, well, Texas only lost a couple games, and it was mainly to just the Georgia Bulldogs and then, of course, Ohio State in the college football playoff semifinal. And in that first Texas versus Georgia game, when Georgia came in here to Austin, it was as big a game as there was last regular season. The Georgia defense really took care of business, and a lot of that was kind of pinned on Banks and this Texas offensive line. But the more and more you kind of broke that down, it seemed like a lot of coverage sacks and Quinn Ewers kind of not getting the ball out as quickly as you can. So I think Banks was maybe a bit underrated in some of those games that were maybe viewed as in the public eye as a low light. But yeah, just movement stuff. He's so strong, and he was right away. But it's just kind of getting to that second level, and he was great on that in the first round playoff game, Texas against Clemson. Jaden Blue, a Texas running back who's also in the NFL draft this year, broke a couple long runs, and a large part of that was because Banks and Cam Williams were able to get to the second level. So he was kind of getting better at that as he got longer on in his Texas career.
I had kind of thought going into the Combine that Banks would be the top tackle, and then once we got to the Combine, we found out that he would be one of a handful of guys who would be in the first round. He may not be the top guy because obviously Will Campbell gained a lot of momentum. I want to ask you about Barron because what a terrific slot corner, has good size and physicality to be a slot corner, but I was talking to a scout who said to me, don't be surprised, in addition to his terrific corner skills, he could also probably play safety in the NFL and be a damn good one at that. What are your thoughts about how he projects?
Star, nickel, corner, safety. Yeah, he's. I mean, and he will let you know that he's the most versatile player in the draft too. That's one thing you can argue maybe about some of the stuff on tape. You can never argue about that guy's confidence, man. He is a soundbite waiting to happen. He's everything you want in a quarterback as far as kind of bravado and confidence and things like that. So Jade is, as Steve Sarkisian says, he's kind of the epitome of what they want in a program. He's a development guy. He's from the greater Austin area and really didn't play a ton early. And then when he did, maybe got picked on a little bit. And then last year may have been a lot of the projections had him as a day 2, at best probably day 3 pick. And then, man, he stepped up this year, won the Thorpe Award for best defensive back in the country. Yeah, I would say you could probably pick apart some of the stuff for him on film, but the things you can't are his ball skills. When the ball's in the air, he's really as good as they get. His versatility and then his leadership. I think any doubts that a lot of scouts or people in the front office may have are going to be kind of dissuaded from that because this guy's going to interview as well as anybody in the country. I know he did a great job at that at the NFL Combine. So he was a big leader for this Texas group, and I think teams are really going to be swung toward him because of that.
Would it be fair to say that I guess one of the areas he could work on a little bit at going into the NFL would be his tackling?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big focus for this Texas defensive back group as a whole. They have 3 Austin guys who are all in this defensive back room at least last year. Every single week you talk to them, that was like, what's the goal this week ahead of whether they were facing UTSA or Georgia, and it was tackling better as a defensive back group. So, yeah, I mean, I think Jade is maybe not the biggest imposing defensive back, and I think that might be a thing at safety. That would be my only question. But as the season got on, he made some pretty good plays in the open field. He was not their best open field tackler. They had some really good guys back there, like Andrew Makubo's in this draft as well. But I think he got better as the season went along.
I'm going to pair the wide receivers together, Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond. Both guys' stature at 5'11", although Golden a little more beef on his bones, but also ran a sub 4.3 at the Combine. Both guys have speed. Both guys can certainly get down the field. Could you compare and contrast the two? Because I think that both guys are going to need some polish and some more experience. And quite honestly, I think both guys might have been better if they had been able to stay for another year, only because they need to come up some.
Before you dive into that, just because this obviously just happened yesterday, have you heard is there any updates on Isaiah Bond, this legal situation that seemed to be unfolding yesterday?
No, this has happened the past couple seasons as far as the Texas player and some legal situation developing before the NFL draft. Last year it was Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle, who in that incident was here in Austin. So we were reporting on that at KXAN, and that did not really appear to affect his draft stock. He was still picked, I think, as one of the first couple of picks in the second round and had that good rookie season. So nothing new as far as Isaiah Bond, but I'm glad you guys got to the wide receivers because Matthew Golden is by far my favorite player from this Texas class. He, to me, is wide receiver 1 and cannot be picked high enough. So just a little bit of a backstory. Matthew Golden, a transfer from Houston.
Right.
And it's, kind of weird to think about a guy from a smaller program like that being possibly wide receiver 1 of the NFL draft. But when Texas played at Houston in 2023, Golden torched Texas. That game went down to the wire. That was a Texas team that made the college football playoff semifinal, but Golden was a big reason why the Cougars were even in that game, scored a pair of touchdowns. So then the Longhorns grabbed him in the portal, and he was the clear number 2, if not the number 3, kind of going into the season behind Isaiah Bond, who was pegged as the definite number 1. And Matthew Golden was unbelievable. He was so consistent. The way he could high point a ball as not the tallest receiver was really unreal. If you go back in the college football playoffs, they played 3 games, and, man, he was so impressive in all of those, the way he was able to make contested catches. The only real question mark was, what's this guy's straight line speed? And I thought he was fast during games, but, yeah, to run a sub 4.3 was icing on the cake for Matthew Golden. So I'm a huge Golden believer. I know Giants obviously have a pretty good number 1 already, but
yeah.
Matthew Golden, I cannot say enough good things about him. He seems to really have it all. And as far as Bond on the field, a bit disappointing last year just because he had to fight through so much. And his games later in the year, he was clearly hobbled by that lower leg injury. and nowhere near 100%. He was explosive early in the year. I remember talking to him. It was either the last non-conference game or the first conference game, and he's like, yeah, this is what I came here to do, be the number one guy, and he was that. So I still think there's room for Isaiah Bond to grow in the NFL, and his speed is unbelievable. If you can get him on a crosser, or Texas would just kind of try to get him the ball in any way possible, he's incredibly explosive. So if he's healthy, he can be a very serious threat at the next level.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if a couple of years from now, looking back at this draft, Matthew Golden is, right up there with Travis Hunter in terms of being considered the top receivers. He's just a great all-around prospect. I'm going to turn the attention, though, back to the other side of the ball. Up front, Alfred Collins. He is massive. I mean, 6'6", 332 pounds. I mean, the epitome of, a traits guy right there. And he showed at Texas that he could really line up just about anywhere across the defensive line. But when you look at his production, he didn't seem to, excel that much as a pass rusher. What does he need to do to improve just that specific aspect of his game?
Well, Alfred is my favorite guy on the defensive side of the ball. He's another local product that it was a big question mark for Texas, kind of what they would do up front, because not only did they have Tavondre Sweat the year before, that was picked in the top 35 or 40 picks of the 2024 draft, but also Byron Murphy, the first-round pick of the Seahawks last season. So Texas had to replace a ton up front, and Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins were kind of two of those guys that anchored that. And Collins was a space eater. Texas calls them big humans. And Cam Williams, the offensive tackle for Texas in this draft, or one of them, I should say, who was listed at like 360, 370 as far as weight early in his college career. And then Alfred Collins are two of the biggest dudes I've ever seen. Every week when they would come for media availabilities, it was always astonishing. These guys were monsters. And as far as Collins on the field, I really liked what I saw this past year. Yeah, maybe he wasn't the best pass rusher, but from an interior perspective, he was always, and like every other coach would say, like, you have to key on Collins inside. So he was a space eater who would consistently find himself in the backfield. I guess it was just kind of finishing plays if his numbers weren't that high. But he found himself in the backfield all the time.
For people out there who don't know visually what Collins looks like, let me read you these combine numbers: 6'6", 332. But here's the impressive part. Noah, you got to help me out with this, because 34 and 5/8 length on the arms. Okay?
Yeah.
That is insane. When I saw him at the combine, I was like, holy smokes. He should be a better pass rusher. I think if a guy like Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach here at the Giants, were to get a hold of him, he would get him the proper techniques to become a really good pass rusher, because there's no question about the rest of his traits. I simply wanted to ask you, with guys of that size and that girth, sometimes the biggest problem is weight fluctuation, because it hinders their stamina and their ability to efficiently get good snaps on the field. Has that ever been a problem with him?
Texas had great depth last year, so I would say it wasn't a direct problem, but I don't think it was tested as much as NFL teams would like to say. They had a really, really good rotation. That NIL money for the Longhorns is crazy, so they can go 5 and 6 deep at a lot of these positions. But another thing is, it's tested no matter what. Like, I'm dying on the sideline shooting with a camera when it's 105 degrees in the first 5 games of the season. So that depth was massive, and for Collins to be able to make big plays in the fourth quarter of games early in the season, and it was legitimately over 100 degrees. I don't think that's as much of an issue, but like I said, Texas's depth was so good that he wasn't playing maybe as much as NFL scouts would like to when it comes to stamina and things like that.
All right, so of course we got to ask about the guy under center for the Longhorns. Heading into this past season, Quinn Ewers was, widely considered one of the top quarterbacks, I think, in the nation. However, this past season showed a little more inconsistency in his game than he did the previous year. 12 interceptions this past season. He had 12 the 2 years prior combined. What do you think led to that increase in turnovers and that sort of inconsistency that we saw?
A lot for Quinn. So I've been questioning Quinn and his ability for all 3 of his years at Texas, but I think this past year he actually showed me a lot. He was really, really good early in the season before he got hurt. When they played at Michigan, Michigan ended up not being the best last year, but early in the season that was a ranked showdown. It was the reigning national champs. There's a lot going into that game. And Quinn spun the ball outstanding. I remember a third down on the first drive when it was rocking in Ann Arbor, and Texas had moved the ball nowhere on the first couple plays, and he had a beautiful throw down the sideline on a just a go route to Isaiah Bond for like a 25-yard gain. And that was a pass he never would have been able to make his first 2 years. The deep ball with Xavier Worthy over his first couple of years in Texas was always a point of discussion because they just could not seem to hit on it, especially Ewers' freshman year. But after he got injured last year, obviously Arch Manning came in for a little bit. He was a bit iffy at times. Maybe we're talking about him next year. But Quinn was kind of never the same after that. He did still make some big plays. I would say, as somebody that's been questioning Quinn a lot and his ability, I think where he slotted is totally fine. Coming into the year, like you guys were talking about, as pegged as possibly one of the top 3 guys in the NFL draft as far as quarterbacks, for him to slide to where he's 6 to 8 generally right now, I think that's more than fair. And Ewers is a guy I would not expect to start right away, and I don't think a team should expect him to do that. But the guy clearly has arm strength. The one thing about him that I notice a lot of the time from the field is he's a bit hesitant to just sling the ball in there. And Steve Sarkisian will say it doesn't look like he's throwing it hard because it's effortless for him, which is true in a sense. But those throws over the middle and in really tight windows when you got to put some zip on it, sometimes he's a bit hesitant to really put some mustard on the ball. But overall, his touch really improved throughout his college career.
I got 2 other guys on offense I want to get to, and then I know there's a couple other guys on D we want to touch on before we let you go. But the offensive tackle, Williams, he's a mauler. He's got traits. I know he's going to need some polish, but there's going to be some offensive line coach that's going to love this guy and probably can't wait to get him and get good value on him because he's not going to get drafted as highly as he probably should. And I also think your tight end, Helm, is another guy who's got some really good traits that some tight ends coach is going to really enjoy getting his hands on.
Yeah, so for to kind of work backwards there, for Gunnar Helm first, if you told me last year that we were talking about Gunnar Helm in any conversation with the NFL draft, I would have said 0 chance. The guy was a blocking tight end and a backup before that, and I was kind of iffy on the whole idea of him being the number 1 for the Longhorns. But, man, he stepped up. He was so reliable, also fought through some things on the field last year for Texas. So I think he's going to be a pretty good late-round get for somebody in the NFL draft. And if you look at the combine numbers, he was fighting through an injury there, so his pro day numbers are pretty vastly different. But still, not the quickest tight end, but a big guy who's super reliable. And once you have that good quarterback-tight end relationship, especially at the college level, like there was no looking back. Ewers, at the end of the season, it was just peppering Golden and then Gunnar Helm as well. It was just those 2 guys back and forth. And then as far as Cam Williams, huge. As I said, like 360, 370 when he first got to campus, and he was what Texas was trying to build to get SEC ready. He slimmed down, though. On his good plays, Cam Williams is one of the best tackles I've seen. There was some mishaps and some inconsistencies there, but yeah, there's going to be coaches and scouts that see him and say, I can work with this. He's kind of that exact guy. And as far as somebody that's not expected to be a first-round pick, there's a lot of potential there.
I'm just going to wrap things up on the offensive side of the ball with 2 quick ones. First, running back Jaden Blue, obviously first time getting extended action this past season, and he really delivered, both as a rusher and as a pass catcher. Given his size and his abilities as a receiver, do you think his future in the NFL is more likely as that sort of change of pace receiving back, or do you see him being able to handle more of a full workload? And then the second one, real quick, Jake Majors. I have not seen anything but rave reviews about him, the center for the Longhorns. High football IQ, seems like he has amazing leadership skills, great in pass blocking. Is the biggest thing that's just holding him back the fact that, he's not, I guess, the biggest guy out there and his arm length isn't that long?
Yeah, for Majors, it's just a physical thing. I mean, he's every coach's dream, and they would say that every single week. Every press conference, they would mention how great and valuable Jake Majors is, which he was to this Texas team. And then Hayden Conner as well, a guard for Texas that's moved over to center when Majors was hurt, kind of a similar thing and even a bit bigger. So I'm a believer in, I would say, Conner even more so later in the draft. And as far as Jaden Blue, I really thought he actually could have used another year in college, but Texas's running back room is expected to be so stacked this next year that he knew right away he was headed to the next level. I do not think he can be kind of a between the tackles, every down back. There was uncertainty for Texas who would be that guy last year. It ended up being Quintravion Wisner, who's back for another year. Jaden Blue had some real fumble issues, but man, the guy's explosive. When he's in the open field, he can make people miss. As far as really anybody as good as anybody I've seen in this year's draft. He had some unbelievable jukes this year, especially against Michigan and then later in the season as well. So Blue can be really good, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that teams view as a between the tackles guy.
All right, I got two more guys for you, Noah, before we let you go. You've been very generous with your time. Makuba, you mentioned him earlier. You know what hurts me about him? When I looked at his measurables, because everything about this guy as a player, 4-year starter, 4.45 speed as a safety, but 5'11", 186. His frame, his length, just a little too short. If he just had another inch or two, right? Just another. This guy would have been a first-round pick. I'm telling you, I believe that. I think he's that talented. But because of the measurables, it's going to hurt his draft stock. And then the other guy I want to ask you about is Sorrell, the edge rusher, who, quite frankly, I think is going to disappoint people because I don't see the speed rush characteristics from him. I think he's going to be a 3-4 edge guy. I like him against the run, but I don't think he's got enough of juice in him to really make an impact on the pass rush at the NFL level.
Barron Sorrell, I would say you're largely in the right there. He was one of the main leaders, I would say probably the biggest leader of this Texas football team, maybe outside of course, quarterback Quinn Ewers this past year. Great college player. He was productive. He was disruptive, did a lot of things there. But, yeah, the speed was certainly not an asset for him at the college level and at the next level as he hopes to go on there. I would say his projection is a bit later than I even expected. So at that point, it's probably a safer play and say this guy's been coached very well. He was productive. He was all these things. And, later in the draft, day 3 stuff, I think he's a fine pick, but totally agree with what you're saying as far as speed being an issue for him at his position, because I know it's something he would work on consistently. We would see him out there, first one out there, working on speed drills, but it just never fully materialized for him. I'm sure he's been working on that a lot. And then Makuba, I'm a big fan of just as far as a leadership guy, and he's got an incredible story that has kept him motivated and has been a fan favorite. He was able to come back home to Austin for his final year in college. Yeah, maybe not the biggest guy, but definitely not afraid to make a hit and pretty good ball skills as well. Had a couple of really big pass breakups and then interceptions late in the season. So I think Makuba, probably around that round 3, round 4 mark, would be a pretty good pick as well, and certainly a guy that is motivated and hears all of the things that are said about him.
There are always a bunch of guys in every draft who you just say, I wish he had another 10 pounds of muscle. I wish he had another inch on his frame. I wish he just had another inch on his arm length. We say that a lot about the offensive lineman, right? Yep. If he had another inch on his arm length, he'd be a great tackle. But he's got to be a guard. It happens all the time. I see him as one of those guys in the secondary. Noah Gross, thank you so much, from KXAN Television in Austin, Texas, talking about the Texas Longhorns. Noah, is there any place people can look your stuff up if they want to see some of your clips and some of your reports?
I'm on Twitter at Noah_Gross27. Longhorns are in a spring ball right now, and I'm telling you, next year is going to be, if you guys want to talk Texas again, there's going to be about 15, 16 guys in the combine. This team just keeps reloading. And also, of course, there might be a pretty big name as far as a gunslinger next year as well. So reporting on him right now, but otherwise, very much appreciate the time, guys.
Maybe we should ask you about him just for a second before you go away. What are the chances with NIL money and all of that stuff, and knowing that his family always valued staying in school for the duration? What are really the chances that he does come out early? I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff recently saying that people expect him to stay for the 2020, what would it be, 7 NFL draft, and I doubt it. He flashed last year at points. He was a bit inconsistent, but obviously we're talking about Arch Manning.
Yes.
I don't know if we needed to.
Yes, thank you for getting that out there. The big elephant in the room.
Yeah, I mean, Arch is unbelievably talented. When Quinn got hurt last year, and then Arch came in against UTSA, he had two of the most exciting plays we've seen all of last season. Broke like a 70-yard run and then some crazy Johnny Manziel running around play and flipped it to Silas Bolden for a touchdown. So the guy can make unreal plays and then also made some young mistakes last year. I think he's going to be good this year, and I don't see any reason why he would stay if he is really good for another season, because the NFL is the goal for him, and money's clearly never been that big an issue for this family. So I think the next level is his goal, and if he performs well this year, I don't see any reason why he would be staying in college beyond 2025.
Do you think a national championship would have anything to do with his decision? Does he seem like the kind of guy who would value that?
I mean, he certainly values it, but I would say I think he's headed to the next level after this year.
Okay.
If everything goes well. There's other players on this team that stayed to try to win a national title, and Arch may surprise, but I'm a believer in what he can do on the field, and I think he'll show enough this season to warrant being a pretty high draft pick this time next year.
Noah, great stuff. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and enjoy the summer. Try not to sizzle like a piece of bacon, okay?
Thanks, Noah.
I do every year, but thank you guys anyway.
Take care.
All right, thanks.
Great stuff from a program that is going to have a lot of names called come draft weekend.
Yeah, we could have spent the full hour talking to Noah about Texas guys.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. If you'd like to get involved in the conversation, again, maybe you want to say something about some of these Longhorns prospects. I will tell you, Alfred Collins is a guy who I don't know exactly the price point where I would take him, but I like him an awful lot.
I feel like his range is probably somewhere between the Giants' second and third round pick.
That's my problem.
34 might be like a little too rich.
I think it is
but
a
I don't know
little
if he's
rich.
going to be there at 65.
I don't think he gets to 65.
I mean, look, if you don't take him at 34 and he's high up on your board as you're getting through midway through the second round, you could always try to move up from 65 in order to get him. The Giants have the draft picks to move around.
Again, there are so many DTs in this draft. You know, you don't have to be married to getting him, but 100%. I will tell you, I couldn't see him at 34. I agree with you. I think he's in the lower neighborhood than that, but I can't see him getting to the top of the third round. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Even with how deep this defensive tackle class is, I don't think he's going to make it to 65.
You just don't see that many guys with that size, girth, power, length. He's got too many great measurables.
Yeah, and I know we've said this about several defensive tackles in the last month or two, but boy, he would be a great fit next to Dexter Lawrence on the interior.
You know, again now, totally different player.
Oh, yeah.
Than Mason Graham, who we're talking about up at the third spot. Let me make something very clear. I love Alfred Collins, but he's not that.
No.
He's a different type of guy.
Type of player.
Totally different.
But still would be a good fit next to Dexter. You could fit almost any type of defensive tackle next to Dexter. What, as long as he's pretty good, Dexter's going to make that guy look great.
If the Giants get Alfred Collins, hey, Jalen, go ahead. Try to tush push. Enjoy. I don't think you'd be wanting to run that play too often against Collins and Dexter in the middle.
I wouldn't want to be in the middle on either side of that tush push, to be honest.
201-939-4513 is our phone number here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll get to your calls in just a second. By the way, do you know, I know you post a whole bunch of stuff along with Pearson. What's up there today on the Giants Huddle? Do we know?
Today, I don't know if it's up yet, but on the website at least, but Dane Brugler from The Athletic. John had him on the Giants Huddle.
The Beast came out yesterday.
The Beast came out, I think it was Wednesday? This week.
Was it Wednesday?
The Beast came out this week. John spoke to him about it, about the draft, about all these prospects. I believe it is already up on all the podcast platforms, and the video will soon be up on Giants.com and YouTube as well.
Now, I'm not in the business of promoting any of the draft guides in particular. I won't do that. People know me. I'm definitely a fan of the Beast. I'm a fan of the Our Lads people. Those are the two Bibles that I always carry with me when it comes down to the weekend of the draft for sure. But the one thing that they did this year with the Beast is they made it much more computer friendly. Did you go through it yet?
I did. Briefly, but I did.
The interactive capabilities with that project now, where it just used to be one huge piece of text and you either looked at it by paging through it on your computer, or you printed out the PDFs, which became a phone book.
I'm still waiting for John to just randomly come up to my desk and plop down a physical copy of The Beast like he did last year.
I don't know if he can carry it upstairs. I mean, that sucker is a load.
Yeah, it is huge. In addition to Dane Brugler.
But now he's got a digital one. I just want to make sure I understand, make people understand this. The digital one that Brugler put out, it's through The Athletic and the New York Times website. You can do all kinds of sortables and searchables and everything if you just wanted to do it on your computer and didn't want to have the hard copy with you.
Yeah.
Just that's a brand new feature. He never had that before.
Yeah, and then when you're looking on your computer, you can obviously search just by name, click the edit find and then
It's
search.
wild.
If you just want to read up on one player in particular, scouting report or a school, you can just search the school or the guy's name, find it right away.
To me, he's the baseline reference. He's the baseline reference because he's got all the info.
Yeah.
The injury info, the stat info, the combine info, the factual guide that he provides is ridiculous. It's just off the charts.
Yeah, everyone obviously, has their own opinion on who are their favorites in the draft expert industry.
No
but
doubt.
in my mind, Dane Brugler is right up there with, like Daniel Jeremiah as two of the best, in my opinion, leading up to the draft. Just the most informative, puts out, plenty of content. They're both great.
He doesn't put out a book, though.
No, he doesn't put out The Beast, but he does plenty of work leading into the draft as well. And then yesterday, you guys might have promoted this on yesterday's show, but yesterday, Ben Solak from ESPN, his huddle got posted on the platforms, on Giants.com, Giants YouTube. He's from ESPN, discussing his favorite prospects, quarterback rankings, and then just NFL trends that could have an impact on teams' draft strategies. So that
Awesome
is also
stuff. Hey, we're getting down to it, folks. We are now under 2 weeks to go.
2
to
weeks
the first
from last
round.
night.
Yeah. First round of the NFL draft coming up in 2 Thursdays from now, and it's going to be wild. Phone lines are open, folks, at 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Now, one other item, which is a bit newsworthy, and we don't have a lot to say other than what's been reported because, quite frankly, we were not there. So, we don't have an eyewitness account. But as it was revealed by Drew Rosenhaus, the agent for pass rushing linebacker from Penn State, Abdul Carter, he did undergo his medical rechecks after having the stress reaction in his foot discovered at the combine about 2 months ago. According to Drew Rosenhaus, the agent, he said yesterday that when Abdul Carter went to Indianapolis for his medical recheck, there was sufficient healing going on. He does not need surgery and doesn't believe that it will inhibit his draft status, his draft stock, or anything that he needs to do on the field. Now, of course, this is coming from Drew Rosenhaus's agent. This is not coming from any medical professional or, for that matter, any team, because they're not in the position of publicly releasing that kind of information. So you have to take Drew Rosenhaus's word at face value, whether or not he's kind of helping out his client a little bit by maybe smoothing it out. Maybe he is, but maybe he's not. I don't know the answer to that. Only the teams who were at the medical recheck in Indianapolis really know exactly where Abdul Carter's foot is and what the risk might be in taking him. I don't have anything else to add to that, Matt. Again, we don't have any more information, but certainly what did come out from Drew yesterday was certainly more in the positive direction.
Yeah, I'll say, we don't have that information, but the teams that are interested in, looking at Abdul Carter as a prospect, they have the necessary information. So while it might not be completely public knowledge, the higher ups, at all the different teams, they are getting the information needed to make a decision on whether or not they feel like there's any sort of long-term injury concern when it comes to Abdul Carter. I guess I just want to clarify, not that you misspoke or anything, but Abdul Carter is not, 100% fully healed at this moment. But the report that came out yesterday is that he is well on his way to that, supposed full.
I didn't say that. I said he progressed.
You didn't. You did not. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Right.
That he's not 100% healthy at this exact moment, but seems like he is certainly heading in that direction. He's on his way to a recovery. There are no, big major red flags in this checkup that he had yesterday, at least according to the report. So I just wanted to make sure that was 100% clear.
Yeah, people need to understand, too, there's a difference between a stress fracture, which is an actual crack, and a stress reaction, which is a weakness inside the bone, which I understand from talking to an orthopedist who I know. He said to me, with a stress reaction, you rest it. That's what you do. You rest it and allow it to heal. Allow the body to do what it needs to do to get back to where it's supposed to be. That's why Abdul Carter did not work out at this pro day.
Yep.
Okay.
The only other thing is, as we were talking to Noah, it was announced just that Joe Shane's pre-draft press conference next Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday at 12 o'clock.
How about that?
And then, obviously...
He's going to tell us everything we want to know,
yes,
isn't
I'm
he?
sure he's going to give us the exact draft strategy, not be coy at all. And then the following Monday, we already knew this, but the offseason program starts. We'll hear from Brian Dable speaking. A couple of players will speak as well. Then we got the draft. And then 2 weekends after the draft, rookie minicamp, May 9th and 10th. So all of this was just announced as we were on air. So
I love it.
I'd share the information.
Absolutely, 100%. That's great to get that stuff out there because we are rocking and rolling. Before you know it, opening day is going to be here. And again, I guess I don't know if you were on with me the other day. Mike North, the VP of Broadcasting with the NFL, said he's expecting the schedule to come out May 13th, 14th, or 15th, right in that area. He told that to the Always Game Day podcast that is up in Buffalo. He's very, very good friends with the people who run the Bills podcast. They have one much like we do. And he does like over an hour every single spring with those guys. I don't know where he finds the time to fit it in, especially this close to the schedule release, but he does it for them. Sal Carpaccio, a friend of mine, does the sideline reporting for the Bills. He was obviously co-hosting the show, had Mike on, and again, Mike told him they're looking for May 13, 14, 15-ish. That's what they're thinking for the schedule.
So a little over a month. We should know the schedule.
So anyway, 201-939-4513, our number on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We go to Don in Texas. Hey, surprise, surprise. My guess is he wants to talk Longhorns. How's it going, Don?
How you doing, P-Dot, Matt? It's been about a year since I called you guys, but I don't miss an episode, man.
Well, thanks for sticking with us.
Nice to hear from you, Don.
All right. So basically, I'm going to talk about a few things. And P-Dot, I'm going to steal one of your phrases, and I'm going to steal a phrase that Tom Brady uses, and then I'm going to end the call with 3 questions.
Wow, you put my name in the same line as Tom Brady. I appreciate that.
There's a first for everything.
You're very welcome.
Wow.
And you'll hear where I'm going with this, P-Dot. You constantly talk about headache players, and I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Who's that guy that makes the other coordinator at night like scratch his head? And then Tom Brady uses a phrase frequently in every game that he announces, and I love it, the guys that bring the juice. At number 3, I want a guy who's a migraine of a headache, P-Dot, and that guy who brings the juice. You always got players who are a headache player, but sometimes don't bring that second part that Tom Brady talks about. So for me, I'm on the train of these 3 in order: Hunter, Carter, Mason. I'll be happy with any one of those guys at 3. And then...
You don't expect an argument from me, do you?
No, I don't think I'm gonna.
You're not getting any argument from me on that one.
Yeah, no argument here either. Now, my question for both of you, and then I have one for each of you. So my question for both of you is, in the draft, if any of the teams come knocking on your door from 6 through 9 who are looking for a quarterback minus Carolina, and they say they're willing to move up to 3, and in return, they'll give you their first round, their second round this year, and their first round next year, would you do it? That's one question. And then my second question for P-Dot, what are you on, dude? You don't age. You got like a fountain of youth. I'm looking at you. This guy doesn't age. And my
No. You see the thinning up here? This is what happens with a decade or so of a lot of losing. That's what happens up here, okay? But I appreciate it.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that, P. That's why I haven't called you guys in a year, because I'm sick of losing. You guys are so eloquent with your wording when we lose. I do the other one. I have soap in my mouth. That's how many different words come out of me. But for Matt, My question for you is, dude, you're like a robot. When you guys talk about information, you just pull it up. You don't even look it up. What is up with that? You're the man, Matt. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you, Don. I got a good memory.
Appreciate
I've
you.
always had a good memory, at least when it comes to sports. My wife would probably argue that my memory is not great. But when it comes to football, I seem to remember everything. So, okay.
The trade.
Towards your first question.
He wants to talk about the trade.
To answer simply, yes. 100% yes. If a team in the 6 through 9 range comes calling saying to drop down to that 6 through 9, we're going to give you that pick, our second round pick, and our first round pick next year, I am saying yes, and I am not thinking twice. And this comes from someone who absolutely loves Travis Hunter, loves Abdul Carter, but you are still going to get, well, it's not going to be that level of blue chip prospect. You're still going to get a very, very good player in the 6 through 9 range. You're going to get a good, solid player that could probably start day one, or at least be a heavy rotational player day one in the second round. And then you're adding a second first round pick next year, which if you're not taking a quarterback in the first round this year at number 3, then it doesn't matter what happens on day 2 or day 3 of the draft. Looking ahead to next year, a quarterback is 100% in the realm of possibility. So to have 2 first-round picks, and if it's a team in the 6 through 9 range, obviously it's a team coming off not the best season. That's not to say that they won't have a good season in 2025, but I would say, there's a better chance that team is, again, picking in the first half of the first round than if you're trading with a team in the 20s. So, yes, I am pretty much 100% doing that trade.
Yeah, if you're going to flop and then give me a 2 this year and a 1 next year, yes. John has, as he's done many times, stuck a fork in my side because he loves to do it with his hypotheticals. He just loves to do it and give me agita. He presented that to me, and of course, then when I said to him that's what it would take, he laughed his ass off and said, there's no way you're going to get that. And I think he's right. I don't think anybody's going to give you that price.
I agree with that as well. I don't think any team in the 6 through 9 range is offering the second round pick and the first round pick next year.
No, it's not happening.
For example, I saw one mock trade in a mock draft. Someone, I think it was Kyle Krabs from the 33rd team, or one of the guys from the 33rd team, said San Francisco at 11 would offer the 11th pick, their third round pick, and their first round pick next year to move up to number 3. And
I'm not taking it.
That I'm not taking either.
No.
Because San Francisco is coming off a down year. I expect their pick next year to be at least somewhere in the 20s. It's not going to be a top 10 or near top 10 pick. And when you're dropping to 11, you're missing out, obviously, on the potentially the top 10 best players in this draft. So that is a trade I would not do. But if I could fall in the 6 to 9 range, still get, either one of the top offensive linemen, maybe the Missouri tackle, or Tyler Warren from Penn State, plus a second round pick, plus a first round pick next year. And you look at the teams picking 6 through 9, and you have here the Raiders, the Jets. Carolina's not going to do another trade like that. It could be their first round pick next year. But the Saints, Raiders, Jets, Saints, there's a very good chance that those 3 teams are picking in the top 10 again next year. So one of those 3 teams calling, even if they offer their third round pick this year and their first next year in the 6, 7, or 9 spot, I'm doing that trade as well.
I'll go back to what I have said for many, many years whenever you discuss something of this nature. It's got to be a Godfather offer. In other words, an offer that you can't refuse. And John, like I say, John always laughs about it. And I say, well, but that's the point of a Godfather offer. The Godfather offer has to be so good. It has to be so sweet that you are basically fleecing the other team. Now, if you're going to offer me an opportunity to fleece somebody with that deal, which, again, is unrealistic, and I don't think they're going to offer me, I would have to take it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either. But the one thing I will say is with where the Giants are picking, let's just assume that Cam Ward goes 1 and the second pick is either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. The Giants are going to then be in a position where I guarantee you teams are going to be calling to try to get whoever's left between Hunter and Carter. Not to say that they're going to offer, the Godfather package of picks that you and I would both want in order to move down.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee you there will be teams calling, trying to move up to get that last guy because Hunter and Carter are the two blue chip prospects in this draft. And as good as the players on the next tier are, it's a pretty sizable step down from those two. So Joe Schoen's phone is going to be ringing, whether or not he chooses to answer it or whether or not he, actually dives into these trade talks or just kind of hangs up on the GM remains to be seen. But his phone will definitely be buzzing come draft night.
Yeah, all I know is you better come with the goods, so don't make the phone call, okay? Because we're just not going to answer the phone. All right, guys, let's go back to the lines. We go to Wilson in Roxbury. You're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Wilson, I feel like I haven't heard from you in a while.
Well, Matt, man, listen, I just letting simmer things down because,
See, I figured that you were in therapy.
No. Listen, Matt, I love you. You know I love you. And I know you like these two guys, bro, Joe Schoen and Brian Dable, personally. I understand that. But you got to be a little more objective, Matt. If they trade down or whatever, right, who do you think is going to make the picks next year? Not Joe Schoen, they're not going to be here. If they win, you know what, Matt? You know what? A lot of people that know a lot more football than me, they have a lot more resources than me. You know what they think about the Giants? The Giants either are the 32nd worst team in the NFL, the 30th worst team in the NFL, or the 28th worst team in the NFL. Meaning that they don't believe in their roster, they don't believe in this head coach, and they don't believe in this general manager. So there is no future, Matt. There is no future. If the Giants don't make the playoffs, they're gone. Because Giants fans like myself, we're not going to stand it anymore, man. You can't tell me on the year 4 of Brian Dable and Joe Schoen's regimen that we're still rebuilding. John Mara cannot come back next year if we win 5 or 6 games and tell, that little press conference that he does, well, listen, it doesn't look like it, but we're going in the right direction. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. We're sick and tired of it. So he better get this third pick correctly so whoever he picks makes an impact on the team. Obviously, it's not going to be a quarterback because if they draft a quarterback, the third overall pick, they should be indicted. Because we need to win, Matt. We need to win games, man. We need to be in it or at least, one game behind in the playoff race at the end of December. We cannot go. So they won 3 games last year. So if they win 5 games next year, it's an improvement, 2 games. You think it's gonna fly with Giants fans?
I think
Answer me that, Matt.
Well, first of all, a couple of things, Wilson.
Go ahead, Matt.
First thing, I didn't say that I thought the Giants are going to trade down. We were presented the hypothetical situation with a quote-unquote Godfather offer, and if that was the offer the Giants received, if I were the GM, I would accept it. That doesn't mean Joe Schoen is going to do that.
And we both said it was an unrealistic offer.
Yes, we both said it's not.
So, Wilson, you got to be careful. You got to be careful, Wilson. Okay? Seriously, we both said it was an unrealistic offer. We would make it if it was on the table, but it's not going to be on the table. So why are you criticizing him for that? I don't get it.
But another thing,
I'm not
Wilson.
criticizing. What are you thinking?
Wilson.
I love. Paulie, we all having a conversation. That's all.
No, we are. Wilson, we are having a conversation.
But they have to. Paulie, come on. Now, you know me.
All right.
Wilson, I want to bring something up to you because you laid out all that information just now.
Yeah.
But I just want to think back only a couple of years ago to the 2021 draft. Granted, it wasn't exactly the same situation, picking 3rd and picking 11, very different, but you had a GM who the pressure was on him to have a successful season, and he traded back in order to get a first-round pick in the following draft. So to say that there's no way there's no possibility of that happening, I don't think that's fair to say.
Matt, let me ask you something. You know that the Giants gave us a great season, the 2022 season, right? I know that nobody expected anything, and somehow we made the playoffs. By the way, with all Dave Gettleman players, by the way, but everybody seems to forget that part because Dave Gettleman has gotten killed, and the reason
Wilson, I don't forget that. Don't put me into that bucket of apples, please.
Matt, I love you. We're just having fun. Come on.
Yeah, no, we're just talking.
What?
We're just talking.
You're getting mad at me. All right, whatever. All right, so we made the playoffs. and we had a great, it was a season out of nowhere, and we rode it till we couldn't ride it anymore, and we enjoyed it. But eventually, though, that season, it's gotta be put in the books. It's gotta be laid to rest. We can't keep living off that season.
But Wilson, I wasn't even talking about that season. I was talking about the draft before, the year before, because you said that there's no way that Joe Schoen will trade down from number 3. But I'm saying Dave Gettleman, going into the 2021 draft, had the same level of pressure that, people are putting on the Giants and Joe Schoen this year, and he traded back to get a first-round pick the next year. That's what I'm saying.
Dave Gettleman didn't think he didn't have either you win or you're gone. Now, don't forget, we all forget, Dave Gettleman got sick and everything, that screwed everything up. Listen, I know a lot of people, Dave Gettleman took a lot of flack, but listen, he did build a Super Bowl team with Carolina. There was a lot of stuff that happened against Dave Gettleman.
There's no doubt, Wilson. I don't want to adjudicate Dave Gettleman's tenure here, because I was certainly much more fair to him than most people, but I don't want to go there. I just want to read. I want to read something to you, though. I do want. Wilson,
I'll get off with this. At the end of the day,
okay, go ahead. You
can see where Giants fans are coming from, right? We cannot. We got to win.
There's a lot of frustration.
We got to win.
Yes, you know how I feel about this. That's why I was all in on getting the free agent veteran quarterback to be the starter, because you got to win games this year. Absolutely. Wilson,
right.
Thank you. I appreciate the call. Call us back again.
Thank you, Wilson.
No hard feelings. I do want to throw something out, though, and I put this up. Again, the other day, the VP of Broadcasting of Planning and Scheduling, Mike North of the NFL, made this explanatory statement to the Buffalo Bills podcast, and I think it's important. I want to read this to you. I posted it on Twitter, but not everybody sees that. But it gives you an idea of what the National Football League is thinking about the Giants. They don't share this common opinion that's held by most national media that the Giants are just also-rans and basically floor mats. They don't share that, okay? The comment and the quote by Mike North was, he said he was very intrigued by Russell Wilson coming to the Giants and wonders how much that is really going to boost them. His quote was, quote, everybody just sort of looks at the record and thinks, oh, they must be terrible. They really weren't. As somebody who lives in New York and watched most Giants games, it felt like they were in most games last year, even with the rotating quarterbacks and all the injuries they had. I think the Giants have a really interesting schedule. I'm not sure if we're going to put them in 6 or 7 primetime games. That's as they're planning. And I continue the quote. But you're going to find yourself playing a lot of big games maybe down the stretch that matter if they can be competitive. He is certainly, that's Mike North, VP of the league, and you know how the league looks at these teams. They try to be predictive because it's important to them how they construct the schedule. Here's a guy who was very much saying that the Giants were very much underrated because of their one-loss record last year. They're a better team than that. They're a better roster than that. He knows it. The league knows it. And he's leaving the door open to exactly how much better the Giants will be this year, how much more their record will improve. And he's saying flat out, maybe down the stretch, games might just matter this year. Well, if you listen to most of the national media, that's not even possible. They believe the Giants are just doormats and don't even think about it. Well, the NFL's thinking the Giants might be playing some meaningful games in the final month of the season. They're thinking about it. It's on their minds because you got the scheduling guy telling you that.
Yeah, those same national pundits were saying the same exact thing before the 2022 season. And the Giants surprised everyone and made the playoffs and won a playoff game. Not to harp on the past, but literally the same exact things that are being said about the Giants now were being said going into that year, which just shows, you never know. That's why you have to play all 17 games to see what happens. But I just want to go back to one thing, or what Wilson was saying before. Wilson pretty much said that he does not want the Giants to trade down. We have to stay at 3. And if you stay at 3, that means you're picking Carter or Hunter most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Which means chances are you don't have your franchise quarterback.
Correct.
Your long-term franchise quarterback. You might take someone on day 2, but obviously you get past the first round, in the top 10 of the first round, and swings at the quarterback position become a lot more hit or miss than at the top of the draft. So you don't have your franchise quarterback on the team. Going back to the earlier caller with the hypothetical trade, if you don't have your franchise quarterback, and Wilson said the Giants aren't winning more than 5 or 6 games, which means they'll be picking in the top 10 again next year in this hypothetical situation. Plus you have another team who could easily be picking in the top 10's first round pick. That's 2 potential top 10 picks to move up and potentially land your franchise quarterback next year. Why is that such a insane, crazy, hypothetical situation? Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen in terms of how realistic it is. But if that were on the table, why would that be such an outrageous thing to consider?
Several months ago when I outlined my blueprint for how I think the Giants should deal with the quarterback thing, and that was immediately one of my possible roads to go down. It was, make sure if you're going to make a deal and move down, it's got to be a huge haul, which includes next year's first rounder as insurance. It's insurance for you in case you need to move up in next year's draft to go get a QB. That has always been one of my potential plans. The problem is, again, I'll repeat this one more time. As John has said, realistically, you're not going to get that package.
Yeah, 100%. But we've both made that very clear. But we were just talking about the hypothetical situation that the previous caller brought up and asked about that specific trade package. So in a hypothetical world, if the Giants get offered that trade package, how do you not at least consider it and strongly consider it like that?
No doubt.
The Wilson arguing so strongly against that is baffling to me, because it puts you, obviously you don't know what quarterbacks are going to be in the draft next year, 100%. But we just spent the first 30 minutes of this show talking to Noah from Texas, who hinted at Arch Manning potential, all of these rumors, he's going to definitely stay all 4 years. Noah basically just told us if he has a good season, he doesn't see that happening. So you have a situation to potentially get Arch Manning potentially next year, and you're saying that it's such an outrageous thing to consider? That is what it's difficult for me to wrap my head around that.
I got a hunch that there's a guy who works in this building who's going to know very well what Arch Manning's going to do before he tells the rest of the world.
100%. But even if it's not Arch, there are other quarterbacks that right now look like they could be top, 5 to 10 picks in next year's draft. It looks like a better quarterback class next year than this year.
Well, that's why, I don't have a problem with planning for that. And that's what you would do if you got a haul. You would be kind of planning ahead for that possibility. Should it need be? Who knows? Maybe it won't need to be. Maybe Russell Wilson will have a great year, finds the fountain of youth, looks so good that maybe the Giants decide they want him back for another year.
That would be fantastic. Because if in order for him to have that sort of season, that means the Giants are winning a good amount of games this year. So sign me up for that in a heartbeat.
Or maybe they do get a project quarterback on day 2. And maybe under the tutelage of the 2 veterans who are here and Brian Daboll, maybe they turn out to have some belief in that guy.
And
Who knows?
Again, that would be great for the future of the Giants. And if that hypothetical trade situation, if the Giants did that and then realized, we don't need a quarterback next year, guess what? You still have potentially 2 top 10 or top 15 picks in the draft to get 2 guys that are going to help you right away.
Folks, it's been an interesting hour for sure. Thank you so much for joining us. Noah Gross down there in Austin, Texas, joined us earlier during the program to talk about the Texas Longhorns and the guys that they are sending into the National Football League draft. Once again, we are here every Monday through Friday, all weekdays, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, for a live 1-hour program, Big Blue Kickoff Live. Jot down the number, 201-939-4513. If you want to give us a call, as always, you can always hit us up on Twitter at #GiantsChat. And all I can say is, folks, enjoy the weekend, because this snowball keeps rolling downhill, and it is going to be a crazy and frenetic next week and a half as we get set for the National Football League draft. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. You've been watching Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So long, everybody.